The following program is made possible in part by the Dayton Bar Association.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Swillinger, and I welcome you to this month's edition of You and the Law. We have a few bookkeeping things to take care of, but before we do, I want to remind you that our topic this evening is your taxes and estate planning, advice for now and later. We're very fortunate to have Christopher Cowan, a very fine Dayton attorney and very fine CPA as our guest this evening. Chris has been here before, and I'll give him a chance to tell us a little about himself and get started on our topic in a few minutes. But you see me looking down and up, and I just want to make sure that I cover a few of the usual bookkeeping matters. The show is brought to you by the Dayton Bar Association and by DATV, Dayton Access Television. It is underwritten by the Bar Association. The Bar Association's general number is 937-222-7902, and you will either get to a receptionist or to a series of recordings. And hopefully, if you have questions, you need a lawyer, whether it's on this topic or these topics this evening or others, you can ask for the Dayton Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service, and they will give you information. There's also information on the website of the Dayton Bar Association about the Dayton Bar generally, as well as the Lawyer Referral Service, and you can get to that merely by Googling, for instance, the Dayton Bar Association in Dayton, Ohio. The show is brought to you, as I said, in part by DATV. Online, that is www.datv.org. Those who are watching are, I suppose, unless it's your first time, familiar with the show. I recommend that if you have questions while the show is going on and you'd like to call in, as this is a live call-in show, go to DATV, to our website, and your instructions will be there as to how you can call in, and we hopefully will be able to get to your call. We have a lot of information to cover, but some nights we don't get that many callers, so don't be shy and think your call won't get through. Hopefully it will. You also learn what TV stations you can view this on live, and where you will be able to see it at some point in the future, not only on DATV, but on the Miami Valley cable stations, which serve more the south areas where DATV is the city of Dayton and points north, east, and west. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you before we get started? When you call in, the number is 937-223-5311. That may appear on the screen. Now that we're doing these shows on Zoom because of the COVID situation, I don't get to see everything that might be going on during the course of the show as I might on screen or on camera in the studio. So I hope that you'll know that you can call again at 937-223-5311. My phone may beep or ring, hear the bell a few times during the show. Hopefully those will not be outside calls, but I may get calls from the station. If there's any communication issue, that'll be their way to reach me other than on the computer screen. If there's a problem with that, they may call. So all this introduction is necessary prelude to the show. I hope it all is, but some is even more so important because we're Zooming now for the foreseeable future. So again, our topic this evening is your taxes and estate planning, advice for now and later. And I hope that many of you are familiar with our guest this evening, Chris Cowan. Chris and I have been friends, I'm pleased to say, for many, many years, and I hope we remain so for many, many more. He is truly a fine individual, really fine lawyer and CPA, and someone who's been a real friend to this show and has appeared numerous times in the past with my predecessor, dear friend Mike Monta, and now more recently the past 3 years as I've been narrating the show. So let's get started, and I will ask Chris if he can just give us a little background. He can go into as much detail as he wants, though, I suppose, about education and so forth, or if he wants to just start with his practice, where it's located, what he does. A little bit of background here, and then we'll get into the topics for the evening. And I'd like to say Chris has done a real good job of giving me an outline to work with, and I hopefully will, after this long wind-up, won't have a lot more to say other than maybe some questions at different points along the way. I'll try to take the position of the taxpayer sometimes and see if I have a question based on something Chris has said. So with that, Chris, again, welcome. You're on, my friend.
Jeffrey, I hope you can hear me and other folks can hear me well. It is awesome. You can, very good. It's good seeing you, Jeff. I wish we were in the studios under the lights and sort of shoulder to shoulder. It's a little more spontaneous, and this seems a little wooden to me. But you know what? I think we'll do fine. I can give you a little background on myself. I got out of undergraduate and worked in public accounting, as you know, Jeff, for 4 or 5 years. And then something happened to my mental clarity, and I went to law school with a wife and 2 children. You can talk to Annie about that. She has some observations about that whole transaction.
That wonderful woman you've been married to for how many years?
It'll be 47 this year.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Congratulations.
No problem. It's praiseworthy conduct, right?
Yes, she's wonderful.
Thank you. And so since I got out of law school, I don't do a pure tax practice, but I do a significant amount of what I would call pure tax. But I do a fair amount of business and estate and trust and other sort of financial transactions. So there's always a little bit of a tax wrap in whatever I do. And so the accounting background in CPA has been very, very helpful. Jeff, what I'd like to do tonight with you is, this isn't dig deep, but what I'd like to do is maybe give 7, 8, 10, if you will, sort of blitz pointers for folks. And my goal has been to try to get subjects that would be most beneficial to the most number of people. Sure. And so it's going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge, but I think for the folks out there, there's going to be something for just about everybody, hopefully on the points we hit. So, okay, great. So for example, this is not a big item, but for just about everybody who's filing an income tax return, we now have a $300 charitable deduction for everyone. That's very, very different than the roadmap we've had in the past. In the past, we had a standard deduction, and then we had personal exemptions. And a short time in the past, the personal exemptions was abolished, but the standard deduction was dramatically increased. For a single filers, it's $24,400, and for married folks, it's $24,800. Now, I can tell you from a practitioner's point of view,
and that is still the law.
It's still the law, and it's a
Okay.
it's a very kind law change, in my opinion. Not for everybody. There are some people who were impacted when the personal exemptions were abolished. People with really large families they were disproportionately impacted. Now, I understand that. My wife's one of 10. And so the concept of a large family I have firmly etched in my memory. But when you look around in America, there are only so many families now that have 10 children, right? And so are there more ones and twos and threes and tens? Well, sure. And so when the personal exemptions were wiped out and the higher standard deduction, what I see is many people are removed from standard deductions. They don't have to mess around with it, and they get a very significant tax break. So from my point of view, I think that's very pro-taxpayer. But even with that, the $300, you do not have to itemize to get the $300. All you have to do is file the return and have a tax liability, and you will get a deduction. So that is something I think virtually everybody will be able to take advantage of. Small, but it's, you know, all the dollars add up. It's a nice little deduction. Okay, that's one. The stimulus check. I know we're in 2021, and the stimulus checks came out in 2020. There should have been two. It was the $1,200 and then the $600 and $500 for the child. But there are all sorts of folks that didn't get these checks. For example, in my estate planning practice, I've had people that died in January, February, March of 2020, and sure enough, you can file an income tax return for somebody who has died, and if they haven't received that, if they're single, and if they've received that $1,800, they didn't receive that $1,800, that's $1,800 you can get for just filing basically an information tax return. So I have seen some of that where people haven't received all of their stimulus money, and that can be retrieved in a 2020 income tax return filed yet this year. That's very pro-taxpayer.
Okay.
There are phase outs. For single people, it's 75K, and for married filing jointly, it'd be 150K. But there are plenty of people that are under the 75K and under the 150. So there's plenty of people that are eligible for their stimulus checks. Also, there are lots of people who don't file. There are people on maybe disability income, Social Security income. They have not filed for maybe many years. They're sort of under the radar. I've also filed a couple returns for folks like that who they're out there, and you say, hey, did you get your stimulus check? And the answer is, geez, I don't file income tax returns. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't get a stimulus check. The IRS and the government just doesn't know how to find you, or people that have moved. So everybody should really think through the stimulus check concept to make sure that in 2020 they got both the checks they were entitled to receive, and for their dependent children also.
Chris, you may be getting to this, but the eligibility requirements based on 2020 income or 2019 income, is that one of the 7 points?
Yeah, that's a point. And there's, thank you for saying that, because there's a reconciliation schedule, Jeff. It's, I can, if you want me, I can go on quite a tirade about problems I've had with the IRS, and they certainly aren't perfect. But I have to tell you, from my perspective, I think they've done a wonderful job with this stimulus. They have moved lots of money to lots of people in a manner that I really didn't think was possible. And I'm sure they've probably paid some people they shouldn't have paid, and I'm sure they've made some mistakes and all that. But from my point of view, I see a lot of people getting a lot of money very quickly, and I've only seen a couple foot faults. And I really don't know if it's the IRS's fault, because people aren't filing and they're kind of out of the system. And so I think overall I'd have to give the service very high marks on those two stimulus packages. It moved a lot of money out into the economy.
Right.
Let me maybe shift gears a little bit that could hit home to a fair number of people also. And
Okay.
that's I'm sorry?
Pardon me, you're going to talk about the 2020 or 2019 income as part of what you're...
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I got distracted. There's a reconciliation schedule, Jeff. Thank you. There's a reconciliation schedule on the 2020 tax return where you go through and you tell the IRS, yes or no, I got my, for a single person, I got my 1,200 or I got my $600. If you didn't, you can reconcile in that schedule, and you can get a a credit for the check you didn't get. Say you got one, but you didn't get the other. Well, you can process that. Also, it will check for you the 1920 calculation on whether you qualify. Maybe you didn't qualify on your 19 return, but when you do the reconciliation return with your 2020 tax return, you might qualify and then get a stimulus payment.
Does the flip or opposite occur? Yeah, if your 2020 income was higher than 2019?
No, there's no clawback.
Okay.
There's no clawback. You get the money.
So if you're fortunate enough in again, this incredible environment we've been in the last year to have maintained or increased your income, whether you get the check may.
Okay, I see. You could, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes, you could be over the thresholds amounts. I'm talking here about people that are under the threshold amounts, but that could be, you could be disqualified and then have a payment due the IRS for an overpayment. That's correct.
Okay, so you shouldn't rely on the idea that it's based on your 2019 income. When the stimulus payments came out, they said it was based on 2019, but if you've gone ahead and filed your 2020 return.
You should reconcile on the return. That's what you should do.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Okay, so now something that's not so kind. We have all these people working at home, literally tens of millions of people working at home. We used to have a home office deduction that was out there, but in the prior tax change, that was limited basically for people that are self-employed. So that's not so good. So we have lots of people out there working from home that aren't really able to take home office deduction. Now, maybe their employers are providing them or giving them extra compensation, but there's virtually going to be no tax deductions for 2020 people working at home unless you're self-employed. Now, unless you're self-employed architect, doctor, lawyer, accountant, somebody who's outside salesman, maybe, but somebody who's just working at one of our local companies here in Dayton, and now they're working in their home in one of the suburbs, that would be a classic example. They're not going to have any real tax deductions available to them. So there was talk about the law changing that respect. It did not change.
Okay.
I'll go back to another good one for people, and that would be IRAs and 401k programs. 2020 was basically, you don't have to take out one of the required minimum distributions. What we're talking about is when somebody gets to be age, old law was age 70 and a half, you get to be age 70 half, then you need to take out money out of your IRA or 401k plan. It's based on your age, a certain percentage, and then it would be taxable income. So what IRS has permitted for 2020 is you could leave your money into your IRA or SEP, and you weren't required to take dollars out. The concept being that people could defer this and maybe save income taxes, and also the government wants people to have properly funded retirement. So it has multiple factors to let them keep the money in. Also, if you put money in and you want to take money out, you can take money and put it back in. If you took money out and you didn't wish to have it, you're like, all of a sudden, geez, I didn't know this law was going to happen, or I didn't know the law. You can put the money back in, and you can avoid the income tax then on a distribution you took, but now you don't wish to keep and you want to put back in.
Now let me two things. One, in preparing and reading over the materials you sent me, I have a question because I know the Tax Foundation is a source that you utilize, and you shared some information with me. It's my understanding that they're saying in their summaries that most provisions of the American Rescue Plan Act that apply to taxes expire after 2021 unless Congress acts to continue them. there's some exception, child care tax credit, they're talking about that type of thing. So this type of thing that we're talking about now with the required minimum distribution, talking about IRAs, age 72 as opposed to age 70 and a half to be required to take some money out. Is that just for those, who have the desire to do that for their 2020 income, but how does that affect their estate planning going forward?
Yeah.
Did I clarify that? Okay.
That's good. And you know what? That's if I could even step up a little bit above that.
Okay.
This whole area has had such a tremendous amount of change and modification, basically in back-to-back years. And we'll talk about the Rescue Act. I have some materials I want to talk about the American Rescue Act that was just signed last week. But what is happening is we have a lot of sort of one-off changes, and some are only good for a certain number of years, and there's timing on others. Let me clarify. The 2020, you don't have to take required minimum distribution out of your 401k or your IRA. That's a 1-year deal. That was only for 2020. Now we're into 2021. Now we have modified the old 70 and a half rule, and now we're at 72. So when you're at 72, if you're 71 in 2021, you don't have to take any money out. So you didn't have to take any out, obviously, in 2020, and now you don't have to take any out now because you're not 72. And so people, they're not getting 20, 30 years of grace period. They may be getting maybe 2 years or so from 70 and a half to 72, right? But you can, if you're going to be 72 next year, okay, you don't have to take any money out this year. So it's not huge, but it's one of those it's a little thing that's good. The 72 rule, my understanding is there's no sunset date on when that'll happen. Also, and I think this is actually a little bigger piece to the pie, and this is what I'm seeing more and more, truthfully, in my practice. I'm seeing people deferring retirement. I'm seeing people working past normal, like 65, 66, 67 ages, and they're still working. And they're working because things are expensive. Maybe they want to continue with a certain lifestyle. Maybe they really like their job. And so what the government has done to sort of mirror that is, it used to be when you were at the old distribution age, 70 and a half, you had to take money out and you could not put money in. Okay, so the government again has recognized people are living longer and things are again more expensive. So what the government is saying is if you are working and you wish to put money into your 401k or into your IRA, you can do that after age 72. You can keep right on working. You would be required to take money out, but you could also put money in. And I think that's going to be a real boost. If you read the statistics, there are just so many people that are underfunded going into retirement, paying for college education for their children, and just the lack of wage increase for a lot of people has put pressure on people's retirement. So I think this is very, very pro-taxpayer. And this is obviously not everybody is in a 401k, not everybody has IRAs. Right. But a lot of those are underfunded. And you read all the studies about people taking money out of their 401k or they don't match. And so there's a lot of dead money that it has been lost over the years with these plans. So I think this is very healthy, that people that wish to work and can work can then continue to kind of fund their retirement account through their earnings.
That's a key point.
You got to work. You got to work.
Earned income, not interest and investment.
Yes, it's not for somebody who's sitting on the beach and having pina coladas. This is for somebody who's working, and they'll have to take some money out, but they can also put back money in. So it's the idea that money in that pension account, the 401k or the IRA, will last them longer into their retirement because they're working and contributing. Okay. And hopefully it'll be making some money in that.
Okay. Before you go on, one other question. When you're talking about income, I want to go back because I didn't want to interrupt your explanation here. when you're talking about income eligibility or relative to the distributions in 2021 and 2020, and particularly we're talking about 2020 taxes because that's the tax year coming up on April 15th, so to speak. But people need to take into account what type of income they have and what's included in determining your adjusted gross income. If they have an expectation relative to whether they're going to receive, in this instance, the latest payment, or there may be some reasons they went over a certain amount and didn't receive the last two payments. What I'm trying to say is not only are you talking about earned income, but you could have passive income there. And am I correct that your Social Security income or disability income are all included in determining the income eligibility to receive these stimulus payments?
Yeah, and Jeff, it's very, very complicated, and it's hard to calculate for somebody. And you're right, all the incomes go in. Now, there are some offset, like Social Security, there only 15% is taxed. And, you might have part of an annuity that's return of principal and not taxed. But the bottom line is the interest, the dividends, the earnings, the commissions, the royalties, the pensions, the Social Security, to get you to this adjusted gross income. Then it's a cookbook thing. So you get to adjusted income, and then you have your standard deduction and the $300 charitable deduction, and then you get down to what they call taxable income. And so then there's your tax, and we have different credits. We'll get to the child credit and some other things. And then the whole mix of all that is going to be whether you are entitled to a refund or whether you pay tax. Our tax system is phenomenally complex. And, if I may interject here, Jeff, I'd like to make a little sales pitch for people not doing their income taxes by themselves. Some of the sort of innocent mistakes that have been very costly to try to fix. And I get it, professionals are expensive, but there are probably 20 or more free places where people can get their income tax returns prepared locally. If you just go on the website from different churches and community centers, have all sorts of free clinics where you don't have to worry about making mistakes. Or if you are jammed up and you can't get the return prepared and filed, they would do an extension for you. So there's plenty of resources out there, a public library and other places, where you can get your income tax returns done at a high level and free.
And don't wait. While we're on that point, don't wait, because as you'll talk about later, don't wait and don't fail to file, because the penalties that come with it's not filing, even if you're not ready or you're not sure or you want to try to do it yourself, you still have to file a minimum amount of paperwork. I'll make it simple, a minimum amount of paperwork with minimum points on your return so that you can get the proper extension and avoid penalties, hopefully, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm going to sort of classify what we just did. Is just some bullet points, some things for maybe just about everybody with the standard deduction, the charitable deduction, the home office, the IRA stuff, and the stimulus. I think that would really apply literally to almost 90 or 95% of the folks out there. So those things are all good, and there may be some money on the table for a lot of those things. Let me, if I may, Jeff, let me sort of shift in, and this is, when I say hot off the press, I am not kidding. Our president signed this bill last week, I believe was signed on March 11. And so it is a monster stimulus package. There's probably only a handful of people in the whole United States who have actually read it. I don't know how many hundreds of pages it is, but it has lots of stuff in there. And kind of like what we did on the front end, I have 3 or 4 things that I think in this package that would apply to just about all the folks out
Very good.
in our area. What we're having first is more stimulus. And what this act, by the way, is called the American Rescue Act. The American Rescue Act. And it is really moving a significant amount of dollars out. We're going to get more stimulus. It's $1,400 for single person, $2,800 for joint. Kids are bumped up to $1,400, and we have the same sort of phase out, $80,000 for single folks and $160 for married. Now, my understanding is some of those checks are actually going to be possibly out this week, which, I mean, it's really hard for me to get my hands around that, but that's what's supposed to be happening. And so maybe in a couple of weeks, more or less, these checks will be coming out. And it's of the same flavor and roadmap of the stimulus that happened in 2020. These are basically credits that are being funded up on the front. And what will happen when you do your 2021 income taxes, you'll do this reconciliation sheet and reconcile back. Did you get the right amount, or maybe you got too much? And it's front loading this credit so that it gets out into the economy as soon as possible. Very, very pro-taxpayer. It's hard for me really to overstate how much work this must be for the service, but very pro-taxpayer, and those checks should be coming. So that's one, I think, very good one.
Chris, let me interrupt you. It looks like we have a call here.
Okay.
Okay, Chuck, can you put us through? Okay, no, I'm not sure what happened there. Please, if we don't work this through the first time.
Says you have to read the question on my screen, Jeffrey.
Let's see what I have here. The question is, I am a design engineer working as a private contractor, working from home. Can I still claim a home office deduction? That's, I guess, the question. There's some dialogue after it, but I think they were responding to something that I said earlier. Again, I'm a design engineer working as a private contractor, working from home. Can I still claim a home office deduction?
Okay, I would answer that question this way, and maybe I'll sketch just a couple of little facts into it to sort of make it a little easier to grasp. I would sort of start with this. If that individual is on a W-2 type pay, where, you know, a certain salary, and he's going to get a W-2 at the end of the year, I would say he's almost 100% barred from that. But if he's he's a contractor, or he's getting paid so much a day, an hour, a job or something, and he's expecting to get paid via a 1099, where they just issue him a check, and he's taking care of his own health insurance and his own withholding and his own Social Security, and he's filing a Schedule C, I think he has a real good shot at it, because the tax provision is basically mirroring how you would treat either an employee or somebody who is basically self-employed. So if this person was self-employed, I think they would have a good shot at the home office. Keep track of that. They could maybe even depreciate the room if it's used exclusively. If they would have, like, I don't know, maybe entertainment, or they have certain equipment they need. You know, if they're out of pocket for any sort of computers and tablets, and I'm not sure, maybe even supplies, depending on what he's doing, or software, if he's, you know, doing some software in his business. But if he's going to file as a self-employed, I think he has a really good shot at that home office deduction.
I would just like to add that, as I've said in each of our shows, this is presented to you, our guests and their advice, is a public service, but it is not intended to be a substitute for any legal advice, accounting advice, and the like that might be applicable to the subject matter. And I'm saying that because this can sometimes, it comes to my mind that it becomes a complicated issue sometimes when you get into the status. When this individual said that they're a private contractor, are they an independent contractor? And do they have an agreement? Does the employment issue here interface with the tax issue? And so to make sure that you are what you think you are, I think it's always good to get independent advice, because you'll be able to give whomever is advising you more detail than what we can deal with here on the program. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. I think he has a good case, but he needs to, maybe brush it up a little bit and talk to maybe a tax professional.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Can I shift gears?
Yes, and if you have any more questions, our caller, I thank you. And if you have any more questions, you're welcome to call back. And if you need some clarification, let us know. Okay, thank you very much. Chris, please go back to where you were, if you can recall. And
I think that's, yeah, sure, that's good enough. And I encourage the questions. It's good to make us think. That's the stimulus stuff. Very pro-taxpayer. The checks are coming out. If you don't get a check, you should be looking for one. How about that? Let's talk a little bit about state unemployment. This is a little bit of a surprise for me. We really don't see so many retroactive tax changes, but this one's a retroactive. Remember I said that the tax bill was signed March 11. Well, I can tell you people who are entitled to refunds, the taxpayers wait to April, it went to October 15. They wait until they have to pay. But the tax receivers, the refund receivers, they're usually first in. So they're coming in, they want to file as soon as the IRS opens up the gates in February. And many, many returns have been filed. And what the IRS is saying here on this unemployment, what we're talking about, people who are unemployed, the standard rule for unemployment is if you receive an unemployment check, great, you get the money, but the IRS is saying that you are going to pay tax on the unemployment. Now, a lot of people maybe don't have to pay tax because they have enough standard deduction or their income is low, but there's plenty of people that pay federal tax on state unemployment. But what the bill said, I'm sorry, Jeff.
No, I said okay.
Okay, so the bill says that it's not taxable for 2020. Now, this is one we had talked about different time periods for different provisions. As far as I know, this is a 1-year carve out of the normal rule. For 50 years, if you got unemployment compensation, you reported it on your tax return. 2020 is the exception. So what is this causing for people who are going to file? Okay, no problem. If you're filing in April or whenever you're going to file your return, just make sure you don't, even though you may have received a 1099 unemployment notice that it's taxable, the law says it's not taxable. So you would make a note on your return, I got this money, not going to pay tax on it. But obviously there are lots and lots of returns that have been filed for folks who the law hadn't passed. This is made retroactive. So they need to go back and see, did they pay any tax on this state unemployment? And then they need to file an amended return. There's no other way to get it back. IRS isn't going to process this for anybody. You need to go back, refile, file it's 1040X, and then state that you paid tax on the state unemployment, and is going to be some sort of a refund for you.
Now, we sometimes have callers who call from other states, or so I've been told. I don't know that we've had that in the 3 years or so that I've been doing this, but does that, which you just expressed, is that nationwide or nationwide because it's under the federal act?
We're talking about the federal.
Yes. Okay.
Different states will have their own. Ohio basically is a piggyback state. When you get to your federal adjusted gross income, Ohio takes the lion's share of that. And then there's some offsets for state refunds and different kind of municipal income and IRS interest. And there's a plethora of things that are adjusted. So it would depend on your state. But on the
Yeah.
federal level, the federal level is saying this particular item isn't going to be taxed at that level.
Okay. And the
Okay,
and the
total pro taxpayer, it's just a matter of you have to go back and amend a return if you were early and on filing.
Okay. Okay. Are while you're still talking about the unemployment, are you going to mention the 10,000?
Oh, the number. Thank you, Jeffrey. So worked up about these amended returns. Yeah, it's up to 10,200.
Explain again what that is.
In other words, it is possible somebody could get 11,200 in state unemployment. This non-taxable piece is capped out at 10,200. If you're under 10,200, no problemo. If you're over the 10,200, there's going to be I haven't actually looked at the schedule, but there would be a tax on the difference between what you receive and the 10,200 exemption amount.
Okay.
That's correct. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's a question. Nothing I say in this area should be taken as a gospel. You're the expert.
Well, this is a shifting sands. This just happened last week. I mean, this is pretty current. This is pretty timely.
Well, I understand. Let me tell you that we have a little less than 20 minutes left, and I know we have some estate planning pointers to cover. So I just wanted you to know, and feel free to keep going in the direction you're going. And
let me do a couple more tax things, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Not at all.
I have a couple more tax that I think are important enough to keep rolling.
Sure. Good.
This is another one that is sort of, for me, a head scratcher, and this is the child tax credit. And what this child tax credit, we've been talking about parts of these being effective in 2020 and parts of these acts being effective in 2020. It's confusing. This child tax credit is going to be a similar thing to our stimulus concept, where you're going to be able to get $3,000 per dependent, and actually $3,600, which I'm not quite sure how they get some of these numbers, but for a child under the age 6, it's actually going to be a credit of $3,600. And again, we have phase out on these. Same sort of philosophy as we saw with the stimulus monies. The phase out of these is $75K for single folks and $150K for married. So if you're above those numbers, these aren't going to apply for you. But there's plenty of people, again, who are under $150,000. So you're looking at $3,000 per child. That's a fairly significant amount, and $3,600 for the younger kids. Now, what I find really, Jeff, interesting in this, unlike the stimulus money where you just sort of count noses and kind of do a rough look at income and checks come flying out, that's not how this is going to go. Believe it or not, there's supposed to be, and this is so new, it hasn't occurred yet, IRS is supposed to generate what's called a portal. And what the taxpayer is supposed to do is they're supposed to get to this portal, and they're supposed to log in the information that the IRS is requesting, this concept of how many kids and what your income is, adjusted gross income is. We had sort of fleshed out a little bit. And then you're not going to just get a check. That would just be way too easy. What the IRS is going to do is pay it to you in 6 monthly installments. So that, let's just say you're at one child, just to make the math easy, and we have, let's say it's a young child, under 6. So our number is $3,600. Okay, you're not going to get a check. Let's say the portal's up and running this month, and you complete all the information, and you apply, and you do all the work, and you verify everything, and you're not over the income threshold. Okay, you're supposed to get a check for $3,600. You don't get that check right away. You're going to get it in 6 equal installments starting in July. So it would be July, August, September, October, November, December. And I guess I guess the IRS doesn't trust you with the money so quickly. They want to. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. I mean, they want you to keep that child. I guess they don't want you to go have a big vacation. You're supposed to use it for the kid and use it through the half year. And so that's how it's been set up. The logistics on that I find completely fascinating. That people first of all, the IRS has to do the portal. Then people have to figure out how to navigate the portal. And then IRS has to get the checks to these folks in monthly installment. Maybe they'll do a card or a deposit, direct deposit. I'm not sure. But that's going to be tricky. And then we're actually a little bit on the honor system. The taxpayer, you had mentioned earlier, fluctuation of incomes from calendar 19 to calendar 20 and doing these reconciliation sheets and what numbers are we using. If the taxpayer's income is changing, you're supposed to go back on the portal and let the IRS know that you won the lottery, you got a bonus, or you've been unemployed and now you're working, and let the IRS know to adjust the remainder of the payments that haven't been paid through this portal calculation.
Am I a cynic to say that may not be a long line? That may not be a long line of people.
I guess if people have lost jobs, their income has gone down, the portal will be swamped. Yeah. But maybe the people with the pay raises will be a little less quick to get there. Yeah. But again, the complexity of all this, and the compliance and the America has 350 million people. It's not like we're just talking about a couple hundred people on a software system and checks and compliance and accounting and due diligence. I mean, this is a massive program. So those are
once again get expert advice.
Yeah, and let me give you one more that's going to be not a 2020 deal for people doing their tax returns. Okay. But I have one more.
That's fine.
Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to say the advice that runs through everything is just pointing out the reason why this year you particularly need to give some thought to getting professional advice if you don't think you can answer these questions successfully yourself. That's all. So go back to your point. We only have about 8 minutes left. I'm sorry to be reminded.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll echo what you said. I mean, this year, 2020, and the year we're in now are extreme. The tax stuff is hard every year, but 2020 and 2021 are especially hard. And truthfully, a lot of these provisions are really aimed for and are intended to help people not in the over $250,000 income level. Those people aren't getting any of these benefits through this tax code stuff. And most of those people, I would think, are getting professional help, right? And so these tax provisions are aimed at not the top part of our earnings in America, but the bottom part. And those people obviously are underserved with tax services. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned the free services on the front end.
Absolutely.
It would be a mistake. I'm sure there are some people who could wade through their tax returns and get it right. But the labor it takes and the chances of error, and some of these credits are significant when you add up the stimulus and the child tax credit and all these things. You have a couple kids, and depending on your income level, you're talking 7 or 8 or maybe more thousands of dollars. I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, you can really do some stuff with those sort of dollars. So, so you should make sure you're getting, and especially something as convoluted. Not that many people file amended income tax returns. Sure, we got millions of returns filed, but not that many people go back and say, gee whiz, I think maybe I did something wrong and then I'll amend my tax return. And that's why this state unemployment one is such sort of a zinger, is you have to go back and get an amended return done to get your money on the state unemployment piece. So very complicated. One more I want to talk a little bit on the American Rescue Act is we have the child dependent care deduction. A lot of people are working, two earner families, mom and dad are both working, and we have children in daycare. We've had a deduction for that for many, many, many years. But that deduction has not been refundable. And there's a lot of people that aren't able to use that full the credit that's generated off that deduction. This is a 1 year deal. We talked about some of these are more than 1 year, some are one. This is a 1 year deal where the child dependent care credit can be refunded and it's not lost through the tax calculation. So that's another one. There's this sort of money on the table that could weep off if you don't file that form and get that credit.
Very good. Very good.
Okay. You want me to talk maybe, Jeff, about some nuts and bolts and filing season things? Or are we okay?
Do you want to just continue on with completing this on the tax piece and maybe twist your arm and get you back on estate planning yet this season?
Let me talk about some things I see every year that just really are dead money things. And you broached it a few minutes ago about getting that tax return extended. The worst.
5 minutes left.
Okay. You want me to talk a little more, or are you okay?
Oh, no, keep going.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind you.
The worst penalty is failure. Well, the worst penalty is fraud, and you go to jail. But we're assuming that people are getting their returns prepared, and we're not trying to hide embezzlements and those sort of things. Is get that return extended if you can't get your return filed, because the worst penalty is the failure to file penalty. It can be 5% each month and up to 25%. And so whatever your tax bill is, a 25% penalty is fairly significant.
So of the amount ultimately owed if you owe something.
Right. So if you owe $4,000 and you just don't file, you're looking at, in not too many months, less than a half a year, you're looking at a $1,000 penalty. That's pretty steep. Paying tax is generally bad enough, and having a penalty like a failure to file penalty is really a sharp stick in the eye. And the penalty just not to pay. In other words, you're pinched for money, you get the return filed, you just can't come up with $4,000. File that daggone return, and you don't have the failure to file. Yes, there will be a 0.5% up to 25% for the failure to pay, but it's 1/10 of the failure to file penalty. So it's and IRS will work with folks. They are very, very happy to get a phone call and have some sort of a payment plan, an installment plan. That they are it's what the service is set up for. They have whole departments to accept these plans. So they're not going to come out and take your home from you. They're not going to go out and grab your bank account. They're not going to garnish your wages. If you work with the service, in 99% of the time, you will have a successful installment plan.
2 minutes left. You choose what you want to talk about in these last 2 minutes.
What do I want to talk about? I'm going to say that the state of Ohio has become very tax friendly. We have been having reduced income taxes, not much, but every year or so our bracket amount has gone down. A lot of people do not realize that we have no death tax now in Ohio. 2013, the death tax was repealed. It was roughly 7% for folks over 300,000. That's a rough number, but that's close enough. It was like a sales tax over 300,000 at 7%. So lots of people are saving lots of money on the Ohio death tax. The Ohio income tax, as I said, is really, it's pretty gentle if you look at like Illinois and Pennsylvania and some of our bordering states, not to mention on the west and east coast, California at 13, and New York is very, very high also. And so those are all good things. And we also have tax breaks for the self-employed, where you do not pay income tax on approximately $250,000 of your self-employment in earnings in Ohio. That is very, very good for the small business person, all the pizza people, all the people working in small business. We have more small businesses than large businesses in Ohio. And so that is an attempt to get business stimulated in our state. So I think those things are really highlighted, and often we don't hear a lot of that.
And again, that is helpful, and it's also should be noted that that's relative to state income tax.
That's state. Those are three
Right.
state bullet points. Those are freebies we just got at the last second here.
Okay. One quick thing on estate planning, but I really love to have you come back and talk about this with people. And that is there anything you want to say about any changes relative to wills and the drafting of wills, financial powers of attorney, living wills, healthcare powers of attorney, anything that people should be particularly mindful of since maybe a year ago?
There's nothing new really, Jeff, but except I'll just say as quickly as I can, everybody should have four things: financial power of attorney, living will, medical directive, and a will. Attorneys do these totally perfectly. They can save bonding costs. They can save filing fees. You get your wishes done. The agency documents can avoid an Ohio guardianship, which can be prohibitively expensive. They're bulletproof. I've never had any document that an attorney prepared or I prepared challenged in any of these areas. And so those are four things that everybody in Ohio should have.
Last will and testament, financial power of attorney, living will, and a medical directive, aka healthcare power of attorney.
Yes, sir. And if they have a more sophisticated plan, maybe a trust, especially like for minor children or people that might have
Special needs.
Special needs of some sort. Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry to rush you these last few minutes. Chris, thank you very much. I'm getting the notice to wrap up. The informality of doing a local show like this is we talk about all these things while we're these substantive matters, and at the same time we're doing procedural oversight here to make sure we get through the show. So I can't thank you enough for being on the program, going along with the program, coming back year after year, and just being a great asset to the show and to the viewers. And I thank you very much, and we'll talk and see if we can lasso you back yet in the current year, maybe if we think we can put together another show here where you can expand upon some of the other things that you do. And I want people to understand, I keep talking about Chris's expertise here. I'm not promoting him over any one individual. That's why we talk about the lawyer referral service. But Chris is here. He doesn't get paid for this public service, and he's been coming back for many, many years. I don't know how far back you went back with Mike Monta, but indeed, you just keep coming back for more, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, Jeffrey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's my privilege to be here, and it's good working with you.
Well, all of that back to you, my friend. So thank you. And to our viewers, I'm going to say good evening, and thank you for tuning in to You and the Law, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Good night.